Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here for this session. My name is Tilman Ehrbeck. I'm an early-stage fintech investor, not a professional broadcaster, like Tanusha and Shahida before me, and even Subnendo is very, very good at this, as you all know. But I have had the privilege to work with Her Majesty for over a decade now, and I will try to marshal my inner journalist to ask the questions that I suspect you as an audience might have. So, good morning, Your Majesty.
Good morning.
Thank you so much. Manisha already introduced you officially as a tireless advocate in our space. The title of our conversation is From Financial Inclusion to Financial Health, and we obviously will come to that very quickly. But for those in the audience who might not know you and your work, can I, and I always wanted to do that, can I start by asking you what led you to pick financial systems work as your area of advocacy 15 years ago? That was not an obvious choice for the future Queen of the Netherlands.
Yeah, well, maybe to answer that question, I have to go way, way back into my own history. I was born and raised in Argentina, a country that in 1989, we had more than 2,000% inflation a year. And I saw how households were actually not making ends meet and actually losing wealth. And it touched me so much. Already when I was 14, I saw that happening in the streets. And I said to myself, I will one day want to change that. So then at the age of 14, I decided to study economics. Initially, I wanted to become the Minister of Finance of the country.
Okay.
But I sort of got sidetracked somewhere. But eventually, I went to New York thinking that maybe the way to do it is actually trying to get investments into our type of countries, in emerging countries. So I was a banker in New York, and before that in Argentina, for 5 years. And while I was a banker, I started trading into the microfinance space, starting to test, sometimes in the board of directors and as an advisor. And finally, when I met my husband and I moved to the Netherlands, I started in this space in the year of microcredit. And one of the biggest issues, or at least the advice we gave, was it was not only about micro, and it was not only about credit, that it was the whole suite of financial services that people actually need, payments being a very important one, savings, insurance, but also, of course, credit. But not only micro, but also even SMEs have other types of credit. So after that year, I started saying we need this notion of financial inclusion. And that's how it actually started. So that was 2015 and onwards.
We were lucky as a community that you met your husband and didn't become finance minister, but special advocate instead. Earlier this fall, in September, at the UN General Assembly, the Secretary General presented a scorecard where the SDGs were standing. And financial inclusion was one of the few areas in green. And he attributed that to a community that has an aspiration and that has very effective leaders and spokespeople like yourself. Tell us, what are 2-3 achievements that you are particularly proud of that have been achieved in financial inclusion over the last 15 years or so?
Well, I think first of all is trying to actually explain the notion of financial inclusion and make it understandable, and why is it of interest to public sector, global sector, and even private sector, and even to communities. I think that was a very first step. Once you start doing that, you start getting this global community. And I think one of my biggest issues that I'm so proud of, and I said it in September, is that I got everybody to work together. This notion of collaboration was very important. We spoke with one voice. So there's been a lot of results I'm also proud of. For example, we have more than 65 national strategies for financial inclusion. in different countries. So 65 plus countries that have actually made national strategies. But all these national strategies were actually a success because the World Bank, the Gates Foundation, yourself, I mean, even working with MAS in Singapore, we actually spoke with one voice. We spoke to the voice with one voice in terms of what is this country needs to do, how can we actually help this country to do this. Also, we spoke with one voice is, what are there was an interesting conversation previously with the governor of the Central Bank of Thailand. What are the trade-offs between stability, financial inclusion, and where are the spaces where we can do this safely? Together with the Basel community as well, creating the right standards. Realizing that stability, not as a trade-off, but if only 20% of the population has financial inclusion, probably the country is not going to be financially stable anyway. The importance for monetary policy. So I think that getting all those notions, these understandings, speaking with one voice, I did a lot of effort in actually getting the data out. In the very beginning, we didn't know how many people in the world were financially excluded. Was it 500 million, 5 billion, 3 billion? And we created an amazing setup of data that has actually been our northern star in telling us where we have to go, to which countries, where we have been progressing, where not, what things have actually worked, what have not worked. So I think the data has been very important as well, and the research. So, but I think the collaboration and speaking with one voice probably has been the most successful part of it.
So raising awareness, creating a measurement infrastructure, creating collaboration, every now and then banging heads together, going to countries and facilitating or participating in a dialogue around national strategies. So you did that for financial inclusion, and now you want to shift gears towards financial health. Let's start, and we will spend the rest of the time exploring this, but we should probably start by asking you, what do you actually mean by financial health, and why that shift?
Well, in 2008, we met each other in Seattle. And it was the first conference that actually the Gates Foundation did, and Melinda Gates was actually involved in the issue of savings. Mm-hmm. And, savings is a very important product that actually is a debt-free way to development, if one likes to sort of put it some way. And we realized that we couldn't actually make that possible if people were not financially included. So financial inclusion is a means to an end, is a way to actually get to people for the products. But then it's very important, that doesn't mean that the people will actually have a positive outcome. We have seen in some countries that, tremendous increase of financial inclusion has led to a greater part of the population being over-indebted. Yep. My country, the Netherlands, we have 99.7% financial inclusion, and 30% of our population is financially vulnerable. To give another statement, for example, in Africa, we've seen a very important rise of financial inclusion, and only a 1% increase in savings, and even smaller in insurance, which are very important pieces of financial health. And to define financial health was one of the biggest steps that we actually did 4 years ago. We got a group together and we actually put a good definition. I like good study definitions that can actually be backed by data. And we define financial health in 4 classes. First of all, your day-to-day management of your finances, being able to make ends meet. People do not actually get a monthly salary, not like maybe our countries, but sometimes you get 3 days a lot of money and then for 15 days nothing, but bills keep on going. So managing that is a very important part. Your long-term goals, pension, do you want to buy a house? Do you want to make an investment into your firm? The third and very important part is the resilience part. How do you actually make a front to shocks? Is it sickness? Is it climate change issues? Is it eventualities of any form? So issues like insurance or also savings play a very big part. And the fourth part, which is actually the non-objective one, I would say, sort of subjective. Do you feel confident in managing your finances? Do you think that you're on the right track? And we always add that because it has a very great link to mental health, productivity of employees, And also because it has a product link to it, which is budgeting tools, advisory tools to create wealth in the future. So these 4 issues are leading in terms of measuring the performance of our clients or our employees' financial health. And we have products attached to all 4 of them that actually help attain this financial health measure that we want from people.
So you have raised the aspirations for all of us, from inclusion, which is an activity, a state, to health, financial health as an outcome, and you just defined the dimensions. It's a bit scary. What reactions have you gotten so far? You're pushing the envelope again, as you did 15 years ago.
Yeah, well, it is, because there's basically a limited, because one thing I probably will not be able to do much about is the income side, but within that income reality, we can still do a lot in terms of making ends meet and developing and designing the right products to actually get people to save more, to actually see the underlying needs of that client. It's really being much more customer-centric than we've been until now. And it would be my biggest dream to actually change the ways the financial sector look at the clients. It's not about me selling products that I've actually figured out in the headquarters and seeing if it's suitable for him. Suitability is one thing. I want to go further. I want to actually see what the needs of the clients are. If he's actually waking up at night because he thinks that he might not be able, or she might not be able to pay the school fees of the kids in the future, how can I help him to make that actually come true? So it's turning around this product definition. I think the big potential about this is digital. And I think that's the reason why I think this forum is so important, is because I think digitization will give us an enormous opportunity. First, to actually get more data and see where are the caveats of a family of households financial lives. Where can we help them? We can actually observe much more. We can actually gather data much easier. You can also design products in a much easier way today. For example, I've actually seen amazing things happening, like, for example, rounding up of any purchase you do by actually putting into a savings account, sometimes 20 cents, sometimes 40 cents. That would not be possible in an analog banking system. But also, we can actually figure out a lot of other issues. So I think that, in financial inclusion, I think that technology will play a very important role in this sense. I'm also excited about issues like open finance, because it will bring back the ownership of data to the client, so they can actually see all its financial lives from all the different suppliers of finances, but also of retailers, so that he can finally have this ownership of what his financial insight actually looks like. Because it starts with insight, and it starts with understanding your own financial situation, so you can actually act upon it. And also because I think that with open data, maybe new innovators can actually come in and design the products that actually people are really longing for.
So you started anticipating what I wanted to ask next around what do you expect? So you have raised the bar towards financial health and outcome orientation. You started mentioning providers and your desire for them to be more customer-centric. You mentioned open data, or data control at least, which goes in the regulatory policy realm. If you think through the key stakeholders, elaborate a bit, what would you love for them to do differently?
Well, first of all, let's start again with data.
Okay.
There's not enough data being measured over financial health. Definitely Singapore has been doing it. The Central Bank of Brazil has actually launched a financial health data project. Kenya has actually done it. And by having data, that gives you knowledge of what needs to be managed. But not only from a country perspective, from a central bank perspective, I think that banks and fintechs should also be doing that with their own customers. See which are the portions of my clients that are actually consistently not saving. which are the portions of my clients that are consistently running on red, and what type and why are they running on red, and why I could actually design a product. So I think data collection and having insights is extremely important. So let's start by that. The second point, I think I'm not at this point thinking that a central bank should actually make regulation. I think that we need to have a dialogue between private sector and the public sector. Why? Because I think we need to have innovation to flourish. We need innovation to flourish, and I think that the dialogue is going to be key to do that. Also because I would not like to have a greenwashing on financial health, having targets. I think this is something that the private sector should see is also good for them. A financially healthy client is a client that in the long term will actually buy more products from them. A financially healthy client is the one that actually going to stay with them, and it's going to increase trust in one's product. So it's also good for you and for your business. And I think that's what we want to attain. But at some point there might be some regulatory issues that we have to look into, and that's something we should be actually dialoguing together. I mean, for example, the US, the OCC has been in dialogue with banks, and they came up with a treating of some regulatory issues to actually make possible small credit that are flexible to actually help people in their short-term emergency needs. And that is actually taken off tremendously, and it's actually done on cash flow basis, and the take-up has been very, very strong, and it has actually helped customers to waive these basically negative parts on their cash flow in a much better way than all the instruments they actually had before. So that's where, for example, dialogue between regulator and the private sector can actually play a very important role in this field. And again, on the private sector, be much more customer-centric. And the other issue that I think that it would be extremely important is the research. I think we need academia and together with private sector to see, for example, the relationship between financial health and financial stability, the relationship between financial health and climate change adaptation. We know, for example, in the Netherlands, we've actually done research that only the financial healthy clients or customers will be able to invest in, isolating their homes, having a new system of air conditioning that is actually uses less energy. So we realize that this goes hand in hand. So I think that we could actually do so much more research on that front. The relationship between financial health and smoothing consumption in the long term. I think these are issues that we need to start sort of, dwelling into in the future that would actually help us to make the point of financial health even more in the future.
Let me come back to the data point that you raised, because data proved so powerful 10, 15 years ago on the financial inclusion journey. You inspired the Findex, which was demand-side data, which for the first time gave us an idea of what actually the starting point was, how many working-age adults actually were excluded from the formal financial system. Because until then, we only had supply-side data. And if a country had, with 10 people, 10 accounts, you didn't know whether everybody had one, or one person had 10, or 2, 5. So we needed the demand-side data, and you inspired that. On the financial health side, you mentioned the 4 dimensions of the definition. And the last one, the confidence dimension, is a bit more subjective. How have these data efforts gone so far? You mentioned a couple of countries. Are they going to be comparable? Are we going to get a similarly powerful set of data that the Findex has provided?
Well, Tilman, I guess I will have to be working on all of that.
Good. Priority number 1.
Priority number 1. I think that's also what I called upon. I think, well, we are with Findex. We are collecting, as you know, some financial health data. OECD is doing also a lot of that work as well. So we will have to have some demand-side data that is comparable across the board. And at the same time, we will have to also have supply-side data. So we will probably going to end up having some kind of data infrastructure like we did for financial inclusion, and as comparable as we can, but also leaving countries to have their own, I would say, sovereign way to actually look into how they look at their customers and their citizens. Also because we have differences in countries. In some cases, for example, I've seen in Kenya, school fees is a very big issue. While maybe health fees are not a big issue. In other places like the Philippines, health fees is a very big issue. So the questions you actually ask, the reasons why actually people get into trouble are going to be different because the contexts are different in every country. So I think we have to be mindful of that. And that is where we have to be very smart in actually having a local context in this field as well.
So in light of this evolved mandate, it used to be the Secretary General's special advocate for inclusive finance for development, very long title. Now it's special advocate for financial health. In light of this evolution, is there anything you will be doing differently over the next couple of years?
Yes, I think I'll be working a lot more with the private sector than I did before. In the case of financial inclusion, it was such a big part of our work to change the mentality of actually let innovation happen. Most sort of, central banks' role was actually mostly financial inclusion. Not many central bankers had as a mandate also financial stability. None of the central banks actually had a mandate of financial inclusion. So we really need to change that and how technology should be allowed to play a part in this financial inclusion. So we had to bring this world of regulations to allow this innovation to actually happen and make it affordable for people. And I think there was a very good discussion, of course, with the governor of the Central Bank of Thailand into how this issue of notion of affordability, played a very big role in that front, and that technology was actually very important. And that continues to be the case. We still have 1.5 billion people to go, and market structures still continue to be issues. But I think in the sense now for financial health, looking into the needs of clients and being the product design is probably going to take a much more center stage going forward. And so I think that will be the big change. So mobilizing the way we do business in some way will be pivotal.
Okay. So private sector participants in the audience, you heard Her Majesty and her offer to work with you. We have to wrap this up, and I want to end this with a question around your hopes. So if in 4 or 5 years we as a community have made progress towards a better state of financial health, what do you hope that to mean in people's lives?
I've spoken to people that are living in such financial stress that their mental health is also a very big issue. Financial stress has a lot of consequences on people's lives, in family structures, in mental health of people, productivity at work. In the Netherlands, for example, we have a national coalition for financial health with employers, because employers realize that when their employees have financial health problems, they don't come to work, they are not very productive, and so they're really interested to keep these good employees on board. So these people want to help their employees to attain that. So there's this peace of mind of being able to be okay today and okay tomorrow that I think will be extremely important. So that's on a personal level. I've actually seen the struggles that people actually go through, and kids living in families with financial stress can be not a very good and safe environment to grow up. So maybe as a queen and as a mother, I feel very, I feel very much for this issue, but also as an economist. I think that financial healthy citizens is going to be paramount for any sustainable green growth of any economy.
Your Majesty, thank you for being such a forward-leaning, technically deep, inspiring and passionate advocate for our work. Thank you very much. Please join me. Thank you.